Hello, everyone! Now I will present to you a condensed version of the plot of the movie, Nothing to Lose. Enjoy your viewing. The main character, Nick Beam, leads a joyful life with his wife Anne and holds a responsible position in an advertising agency. One of his colleagues suggests a logo idea for cupcakes called Kolabach, leaving dark trails behind them, which doesn't at all resemble chocolate as initially intended.
And what do you think it looks like?
Excrement.
His wife reminds Nick about going to the Philharmonic that evening, as well as the upcoming visit from her sister and her boyfriend in a week. Nick visits his boss's office, which more closely resembles a museum, where the new exhibit is a statue of Naruk, the deity of love, evident by the impressive attribute between its legs. The boss asks Nick to replace him at an important meeting with a client. Plans for the evening with his wife were canceled, but suddenly the client decides to reschedule, and Nick decides to surprise Anne. He's in high spirits and buys a bouquet of flowers on his way home, where he flirts with the flower shop clerk. At home, Nick hears strange noises. He arms himself first with a knife, then switches it for a shovel, then to spray, and finally takes a candlestick. In the bedroom, he hears the creak of the bed and sees his wife atop another man. He finds his boss's cufflinks downstairs. It turns out they planned to keep him at work so they could deceive him again. Nick is shocked. Unnoticed, he finds himself in a dangerous area and stops on a street where a gun is pointed at his face.
Welcome to hell, bitch!
The robber demands the car and wallet, but Nick shows no reaction. Nick presses the gas and locks the doors. He races at high speed through narrow streets, overturning trash cans and risking his life and that of his uninvited companion. Nick throws out the wallet and sprays the attacker with the can. He doesn't stop and drives out of the state. Poor Terrence wants to cry. He's at a dead end. It seems the driver is crazy, ready to bury him in the desert. Eventually, they stop at a small diner. Terrence returns to his gun, but due to the long drive, he only feels tired. There are no passers-by, and Terrence has to return to Nick. Nick laughs at the situation. His robber partner now suffers and pities himself. The waitress, sensing something wrong, demands payment. Nick agrees, but remembers his wallet was thrown away. Terrence comes to the rescue. Now, it seems, Nick depends on the robber, as he has no means even for gas. However, he remembers about a spare credit card in the car. They run to the vehicle, where a scuffle unfolds. Nick's fighting skills only amuse Terrence, but Nick proves to be no easy opponent. Eventually, both are subdued by the waitress with a skillet, and the credit card turns out to be expired. Terrence notes that Nick was deceived, assuming that he would seek revenge on the offender. Terrence contemplates the lack of respect from Nick's wife, while he himself keeps his in check. In his opinion, he wouldn't forgive her for cheating. Nick listens silently, but then lunges at Terrence again. Engulfed in sorrow over his wife, Nick accidentally spills gasoline on himself. Meanwhile, Terrence decides to rob the nearest store, but plans change when the cashier starts shooting. They try to get away, but the cashier chases them, shooting. A police car approaches them. Nick decisively maneuvers, causing the cop to crash into their pursuer. Nick no longer wishes to continue with Terrence, foreseeing his imminent arrest. The criminal blames social differences, arguing that it's easy for Nick to judge, having a big TV. Nick advises him to be smarter and use a mask for disguise. He also notes the stupidity of robbing small establishments for pennies, suggesting, if to rob, to do it big and just once. For example, Nick's boss keeps a huge amount of money in his office, guarded by just 2 security guards at night. Moreover, Nick knows how to disable the alarm. At that moment, Nick had a risky idea: to rob his greedy boss. According to him, the safe contains $6,000 to $7,000. Terrence also asked for a share in this venture. The sheriff is already convinced that he is dealing with serial highway robbers. One white, the other black, both known for their crimes. There's no doubt they are the infamous recidivists. Meanwhile, Davis and Dunn continue to rob small stores. Terrence smelled gasoline in the car, and Nick admitted that the smell was coming from his shoes. The robber found a video camera and appreciated Nick's wife. It turned out that Terrence is skilled in electronics, but as a black man, he has nowhere to apply his skills. Suddenly, a huge spider fell on Nick's head. "Get it off!" he screamed. Terrence obeyed, turned on the camera, and Nick, jumping out of the car, performed an energetic dance. Due to matches scattered on the road, Nick's shoes ignited, making the dance literally fiery. Terrence barely contains his laughter, recording the entire scene on video. To prevent Terrence from being tempted by another gas station, Nick takes away his gun, but the cashier notices the weapon, mistakes them for robbers, and points a shotgun at Nick. The hero has to take matters into his own hands. At that moment, Terrence, talking to his wife, sees Nick and thinks he decided to rob the store himself. Nick pays for the gas with the confiscated shotgun, a broken phone, and a lollipop. Terrence is outraged that he's not allowed to rob, yet his new acquaintance is already armed. When real bandits drive by and start chasing them, they crash into Nick's car, forcing him to pull over. The bandits threaten them with weapons, not wanting competition in their territory. Dant brutally beats both of them, while Davis demands Nick's wallet, causing an outburst of anger. Nick laughs in the face of the criminal, revealing who he really is.
He's nothing, just a sad, pathetic, useless, illiterate piece of inbred shit.
Davis was ready to fire at the bold Nick, but at the last moment, Terrence snatched the weapon from his hands, forcing the bandits to lay down their arms. In the heat of action, Terrence made a reckless shot, wounding Nick. Then, he shot the tires of the criminal's car to prevent them from chasing. "You shot me," Nick moaned in the car, then complained about numbness in his hand. But when he checked the damage, it turned out to be just a small scratch. Terrence laughs and advises applying ice to the wound. Maybe then the hand can be saved. A good Samaritan decided to give the hitchhikers a lift at night, and they threw him out of the car. Davis stole Nick's wallet, now knowing where to go. The men had nothing to do at night, so Terrence invited Nick to his home, where his wife didn't know about his side jobs. Terrence wasn't as brave as he seemed, making excuses to his wife for being late, after which his mother joined in.
Mine.
Don't you talk back.
Don't talk back to your mother.
Lisa laughs, commenting on Nick's wound. Gunshots are heard in the neighborhood. It's long past time for the family to move. Terrence had 2 kids, and if not for poverty, their life would have been happy. Terrence's diploma from the Electrical Engineering Institute hung on the wall, and job application rejections lay on the table. The next day, Terrence stole balaclavas, hiding them in his pants, then they needed to get 2 flashlights. Nick asks Terrence to stay calm and not yell at the cashier. Taking a gun, Nick gently and convincingly explains to the seller what to do, then asks who seems scarier. The seller chose the yelling Terrence. With flashlights in hand, Nick decides to raise his voice at one of the customers, and the old man approves of this as more acceptable behavior. In the evening, the friends approached the office. Terrence broke a window to distract the guards, and they got inside. The bandits, noticing the familiar car, were approaching the building. Nick was the first to reach the 19th floor and tried to enter the alarm-disable code, which had already been changed. Terrence, the tech expert, managed to reboot the system. They had just 5 minutes, but the safe code remained the same. They began transferring money into bags when Nick saw a group photo with the boss and his wife. Angered, he gestured rudely at the camera. Nick decided to use the moment for revenge, chopping off the giant symbol of Naruk's power with a sword. Losing control, he took off his mask and expressed all his thoughts about his boss in front of the camera. The alarm went off, but the exit from the building was blocked. A guard appeared, who was about to leave, but suddenly the radio from the flashlight turned on. The guard returned, thinking it was an alarm, and turned the radio to maximum volume, starting a dance marathon. He danced for almost an hour and a half, sweating profusely, while Nick even fell asleep waiting for the performance to end. "Typical white guys," Terrence said. The bandits finally found their targets. The friends checked into a hotel where Terrence was joyful and planning for the future, while Nick felt depressed. Nick headed to a bar to drown his sorrows in alcohol. Revenge hadn't brought him the satisfaction he expected. There, Daniela, the flower shop clerk who had flirted with him earlier, noticed him. She too was drunk and suggested they go to her room. At the same time, unexpected guests knocked on Terrence's door. He thought it was Nick, but it turned out to be his old acquaintances. In Daniela's room, she tried to seduce Nick, but his thoughts were occupied with his wife. While the bandits took all the money, Nick decided to call Anne. She was anxious, as she didn't know if her husband was alive. "I saw everything," Nick confessed. He explained he had come home early and discovered everything, but it turned out that Anne had mixed up the dates, and it was her sister with her boyfriend, and the boss's cufflinks were in the kitchen from the Christmas party. Nick laughed, but then realized how much trouble he had caused. At that time, he spotted the bandits, and Terrence was trapped. Tied to a balcony, Terrence almost fell, but safely landed on the floor below. The next task was to get the money back. They attacked the bandits, who began shooting back. Terrence grabbed a shotgun and shot their car's tire, causing the criminals to crash into a pole. Davis pointed his gun at Nick, pondering the existence of killers and everyone else.
I'm married.
Nick wounded Davis in the arm, forcing the villains to surrender. The tied-up bandits tried to free themselves until the police arrived. In the car, Terrence was upset to learn that the money had to be returned since Nick's wife hadn't cheated on him. The men fought, and Terrence jumped out of the car with the bag. Nick tried to persuade him. Videos are only watched in case of something serious. If all the money is returned, no one will know anything. "And I can get my life back too," Terrence said, giving up the loot. Returning home without money but valuing family, Nick also went back to his wife. At the office, the secretary informed Nick about vandals damaging the statue. The boss and police were reviewing the recording and had just reached the moment when the criminal was removing his mask. But suddenly, Nick's recorded dance began. It seemed the electrician who had come in the morning had a hand in this. Nick realized who it was and expressed his gratitude to his friend, mentioning that the office planned to upgrade the security system, and he had already recommended someone suitable.